Good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to thank David for the opportunity to present today. It's a lovely day. Had the pleasure of working with David last year and hope to do again soon in the near future. I'm Duncan Smith and I'm an asset and energy manager working in Scotland within social housing at a local authority. My background is in construction and private sector house building as well as energy. I'm a domestic energy assessor, or DEA, and I'm currently studying towards the Retrofit coordinator qualification. Spent most of the last decade working in social housing, and my experience includes delivering and designing large-scale retrofit programs, primarily with the focus on energy efficiency, renewables and district heating. Wanted to talk today about why we need deep retrofit, what it is, the journey that we've been on over the last 7 or 8 years, however with a clear focus on how we can justify deep retrofit within a social housing context. So why do we need deep retrofit? And quite a good quote from environmental economist Kate Raworth, who's got quite a good book. Temperatures have risen by almost a degree and will rise by 4 by the end of the century. And there's huge environmental issues for our kids if we don't address the energy we use now. So why do we need deep retrofit or indeed EnerFit? It's necessary, I feel, because we face significant challenges socially, environmentally, and now economically after COVID over the coming decade. We need to make sure that the work that we do within social housing, I feel, positively contributes towards addressing those challenges. The majority of homes that we look after now will still be here when we retire in 2050, and there's a quote there from BRE. And if we don't address their inherent issues and we leave them no better than we found them, then I feel we'll have failed the tenants that we work for. And for those tenants, we need to look at our homes through the prism of affordability as much as reducing carbon. The average price for energy costs in our authority just now are around £1,400, and these are predicted to double, and that's from a quote within the Retrofit course, but I think it's Bayes as well. Over the coming decade, they will double. Now, within social housing, we're slightly different from the rest of housing in that 63% of our tenants, figures from the DLG, are in receipt of housing benefit. And that means that some of those tenants, in fact, perhaps the majority of those tenants' incomes could be between 3,800 and 7,800, excluding housing benefit. So that puts them at risk, or it certainly gives them less financial utility, but it puts them at risk of extreme fuel poverty, paying as much as maybe a quarter of their income to heat their home effectively. Fast forward to 2030, and we expect energy bills, as I've said, to have doubled. Well, that's just really not sustainable, that we're going to ask people to pay upwards of £3,000 on limited incomes to heat their homes. So why do we need deep retrofit? Well, I think deep retrofit can save carbon and can mitigate fuel poverty, but it can save carbon compared to demolition and new build. And it can provide homes that are healthier, which is a key point here, and more affordable to heat. Bit of background in terms of the policy landscape in Scotland. Scotland's placed an emphasis on energy efficiency and carbon reduction. Energy Efficient Scotland was a strategy that was started back in 2018, but before then, kicked off by Chris Stark, as you probably know from the Climate Change Commission. It's an overarching strategy for the reduction of carbon across all housing, public and private, as well as commercial buildings. And heat for our buildings here in Scotland makes up about 50% of energy use, heat and cooling, I should add. Costs about 2.5 billion annually, so a significant amount of money being spent on heating and cooling our buildings. EISH, Energy Efficient Standard for Social Housing, is the component part of Energy Efficient Scotland, and it imposes quite rigorous challenges and targets on RSLs and local authorities. Currently, that target is a SAP C rating, but this will change from December this year to a B rating for all socially rented homes by 2032. Now that's pretty challenging. It's 81, and in some cases comparable with new build over the last decade or so. So can we afford deep retrofit? And the argument we're often presented with internally and externally is, can we afford, or it's unaffordable, sorry. So I'd actually like to turn the argument on its head, and I don't think the question should be, can we afford a holistic approach, or can we afford deep retrofit, but rather, can we afford not to? Can we afford business as usual? Will business as usual address climate change? Will it mitigate fuel poverty? And will it fundamentally deliver healthier homes for our tenants? I think business as usual won't solve climate change. I don't think it will mitigate fuel poverty. And personally, I don't think it's the best use of public money moving forward. Now, this may be controversial, but I don't think we can begin to eradicate fuel poverty or indeed tackle climate change without looking at deep retrofit and indeed interfit solutions. And I really think that anything else is tinkering around the edges. We have significant problems that we have to face, and I think we need significant solutions in order to overcome them. But we've not come to this position of realisation from working in a vacuum or within an ivory tower, and I wanted to take you through some of the lessons that we've learned the hard way, shown primarily through thermal imaging and heat loss, and highlight the journey that we've been on over the last 7-8 years. And these are highlighted in thermal imaging, but I'll also show you some internal environmental issues as a result. And this is how we used to install or apply EWI back about 6-7 years ago. And I suppose to the untrained eye, it looks perfectly fine. But if you'll notice the subfloor area below the floor in the bottom right of the picture, you'll see that we didn't insulate under the floor. To the rear of the property, we didn't, I'll show you the slide in a second, we didn't extend pipework and had to cut around pipework. We didn't renew the roof, and we didn't look at things like chimneys, and we didn't also install new windows. This is the rear of the property to show you the practice that was fairly common, and perhaps even is still now, although past 2035 should go a ways to eradicating this type of practice. But this shows you where the standard practice, certainly in a lot of eco programs over the last 5 years or so, and this has such a negative impact in terms of the performance of the building. We did some study with John Gilbert Architects that showed that this practice, in conjunction with not insulating below floor level, could actually leave 40% of the structure exposed. So certainly not a holistic approach when you're looking at that. And these are some thermal images of a different property, but the same practice, and it shows you what can occur inside as well. So we have to get our head around thinking about the externalities of poor practice or non-holistic thinking. And as we all know, within social housing, people are in limited incomes, energy prices are high. What you're seeing here is moisture being drawn to the base of the wall as a result of it being colder through thermal bridging. And this shows you exactly the kind of externalities that can occur if we don't look at holistic or more complete packages, for example, through 2035, past 2035. Similar image shows the windows, the reveals around the windows, and where we haven't insulated of those reveals. Again, a practice that should be eradicated with past 2035. But it shows you how that can have an impact on heat being drawn to windows and thermal heat loss. I'll move on to some other slides that show you the extent of fabric loss externally, and this shows you the same image, I think, of the same picture of the house I showed you earlier, but it shows you that the chimney is a significant source of heat loss, something that we hadn't considered until about 5 or 6 years ago. Also, the windows haven't been replaced, and you can see there's a white hot glow from pretty much old windows, which might aesthetically look fine, but performance-wise were pretty poor. There's also significant heat loss from the eaves, where the insulation has not been applied holistically, meeting insulation within the loft and around the eaves. And I'm pleased to say this is how we do it now. So you can see that there's a significant difference in how we apply external insulation now. And this is how you should look at a thermal image, where there is still heat loss. You're always going to incur that, but it is much more limited and much less dramatic than previous pictures. And I'll show you the practice that we install EWI in a minute or so. So the case for deep retrofit, for me, there's 4 key strands that we need to advocate and educate others within our organisations, and they're around future-proofing your homes, lower energy costs, and healthier homes, which is really fundamental here. It's an area where, as asset managers, we tend to look more about the fabric and not about the health benefits for tenants, but healthier homes for those tenants and value for money. Value for money over the long term and not the short term. Value for money over 30-year capital plans rather than 2 or 3 year programs or cheapest contractor. Value for money over reduced maintenance costs and perhaps even fewer tenancy changes, meaning fewer void processes. Value for money, we don't have to keep going back to upgrade homes as standards change, that we aim for a high standard at the start and we install that. Value for money is sustainable homes and sustainable tenancies, as I've said, that no matter who is housed in that home and the financial income, that they can heat their home. And then that with the money saved, they can spend on things that matter, perhaps education, food, clothing. So we've developed a standard that focuses on a holistic approach to our stock, and it recognises the importance of air tightness and mechanical ventilation. But fundamental to this standard is that we control the design and specification for the works. We've moved away from contractor-led design, and the previous slide on exposed pipework was an eco scheme. We've moved away from that contractor-led design and specification some time ago, and we control the design and police the quality of that work that our contractor carries out. It's difficult not to overstate this point. As social landlords who maintain our homes, long after defects liability has expired, we need to control what it is we are buying, and we think that we can only do this through design and specification and through running or managing projects. And we think that we can develop and implement deep retrofit, or indeed even Enerfit, as part of a 2-stage process. And I'll come on to that and show you just now. Well, the capital costs are more than standard retrofit. This can be shared over an external and internal fit out. We can look at capital works initially, or a compliant deep retrofit external approach, as well as an internal programme, perhaps even at void stage where there's minimal disruption or no tenant disruption, and it can be an incremental programme that follows on the back of an external capital works programme. Our external works programme is compliant with Enerfit. It looks at a range of measures, both energy efficiency as well as asset management, that reduce that capital spend over the 30 years. It is more expensive up front, but we believe it is actually less expensive over the 30-year plan. And that's highlighted here in some of the pictures I'm going to show you, where we remove chimneys now as standard, and that cuts down on long-term costs. I can go into more detail on this in the question and answer session with David after this. We look at a higher specification of render, which should give us a 30-year life. It's a silicon render we use these days. We look at minimising thermal bridging. We install new windows wherever possible, in order that we don't go back and break insulation at a later stage as a result. We specify aluminium rainwater goods, a variety of different measures that give us a cleaner, more holistic approach that mitigate bridging, and that should provide warmer, healthier homes, and also fundamentally, to that slide earlier on, should reduce the dampness and mould that we have in homes, or reduce the likelihood of that, and provide a healthier environment for our tenants. And this is just an example of the type of standard that we have now as standard. As you can see here, it's a much cleaner effect. Some individual examples of the process on site. You can see in the bottom left-hand corner where we've removed gas meter boxes, or we removed and extended them. We do that with all pipe work. Where we look at communal aerials, so we're not looking at puncturing the system through individual aerials or satellite dishes. We use marine grade aluminium now for all rainwater goods. which again, slightly more expensive up front, but we think over a 30-year period provides much more value for money. And you can see in the right-hand slide where we use a Rockwell system. We use an EPS board mainly, but we use a Rockwell system for fireproofing. This is just some slides. I'll cover this off briefly, but it's looking at some of the practice and process inside around air tightness and ventilation. And it's a crucial element you have to get right. This actually comes from not one of ours, but I've stolen this from Jeff Colley's Passive House magazine with his blessing. And we can talk about this more in more detail, but air tightness is critical to deep retrofit and critical to EnerFit. So what can we do? What can we do as practitioners? What can we do as landlords? We think that there is a 6-stage process that we need to look at. We need to educate people on the benefits of deep retrofit and why it's viable, how it's viable over that 30-year period and not over a 2-year or 3-year cost model, why it's sustainable in the long term, why we need it. We need to become advocates of change within our organisations. We need to promote, I think, the values of deep retrofit. We need to retain control, as the earlier slide suggested. I think one of the things that local authorities have done is cede control of design and specification and delivery of works. We've ceded control over the last 30 years. And I think Grenfell shows you perhaps the worst example of that. I think we need to retain control of design and specification and delivery works, and I think we need to control that in terms of what we want as a product over the long term. We need to collaborate in partnership with each other and share lessons. One of the things our sector does not do is collaborate. We don't talk to each other, and the chances are many of you are watching this presentation just now will have exactly the same type of stock that we do in different percentages. So we have the same problems, we need the same solutions. We should talk and collaborate more on how we develop those. And we should develop those solutions, and we should develop those solutions in collaboration with framework partners, Scotland Excel and Scotland, so that we have vehicles for procurement or vehicles for delivery or for contract delivery that are fit for purpose, that have the component parts that we need to deliver deep retrofit. And fundamentally, we need to deliver it. We need to deliver it on the objectives and the values that we have, and to ensure that quality is maintained. We need to control that delivery, both from a design and specification, and control that delivery on site to make sure that what is being delivered is what we want. So I wanted to thank you for listening today. It's been a really hot day. I'm quite sure you want to get back out to the barbecue. But I wanted to thank you for listening and hope you enjoyed it. Hope it was interesting, and happy to take questions with David after. But I wanted to leave you with 2 quotes from 2 of my favourite people just now. Rutger Bregman is a social commentator, I suppose. He's an economist and historian. He's got a great book out just now, but like me, if you're short on time, there's a good TED talk. Bregman makes a point within his area of expertise, but it's easily transposed onto ours, that the time for small thoughts and little nudges is past. We've tried it and it's had limited success. We're at a critical stage in terms of the fight to reduce climate change and eradicate fuel poverty, and I believe we all have a role to play. But I believe that we have to now look at much more sophisticated and deeper forms of retrofit than perhaps what we've tried in the past. And I think his quote sums that up really well. The time for small thoughts and little nudges is past. We need to try something different. And Guy Garvey, one of my heroes, as long as people are listening, that's all that matters. Thanks very much.